I was born to love you. I was born to lick your face. I was born to rob you, but you were born to rob me first.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 576 of the Dead Robot Society. I'm Terry Mixon. Joining me, my co-host and partner in crime, Paul E. Cooley. How you doing, man? You robbed any storylines lately?
Have I done what with storylines?
Robbed any storylines? You're my partner in crime, so
Plunder.
Crime.
I don't rob. I plunder. There's a totally different. It's a totally different.
You pillage storylines.
That's right. I pillage. I pillage for ideas. Not intentional.
So one of these days we're gonna have to ask how the pillaging works, how the whole pillaging metaphor works.
All right, not this episode though. That's all totally. That's a show unto itself.
That's a show unto itself. So what have you been up to this week, man? Well, it's been 2 weeks. We couldn't actually get together last week. So
yeah,
what have you been up over the last 2 weeks?
We didn't record last week because Luna got sick. She's doing a lot better, thankfully. So this week has been taking care of her. Recorded an hour of Trident, finished content, finished an hour of audio, which is amazing. And wrote I wrote 3,500 words yesterday. And then I've done coding on top of that, and there's more coding, and then all that is just going to keep going. So for the foreseeable future. So that's what I've been up to, the usual. But 3,500 words in one morning, I was pretty pumped about that.
Good deal.
Yeah. So what the hell's up with you, Mr. Broken Shoulder?
I finished writing When Luck Runs Out. And I'm in the process of doing one-armed editing, which is not nearly as exciting as it sounds.
So what is the sound of one hand editing?
Click, 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 click.
Oh, it's so painful. I've had to code one-handed. It's bad.
It's not quite as bad as all that because I'll turn Dragon Naturally Speaking on, and if I have to put in a sentence, I can easily put that sentence in. So it's not nearly as bad, but going back and forth between the keyboard and Dragon to do things is a lot more time consuming than I would like it to be. A little bit, it takes me out of the story a bit more than I would like it to, but it's what it is. It's going to take me another 2 weeks, 3 weeks to finish doing the editing, which means that I'll wrap up the editing about the time the sling will come off. Just bad timing. That's the way it works.
Yeah, but the good news is once you come back, you'll be fresh for the next book.
Yeah, if only so. The sad thing is recovering from having a torn rotator cuff and a torn bicep means that I didn't know this until just a couple of days ago. I had heard that I had a torn bicep. I didn't understand because my wife didn't tell me exactly what that meant. The attachment point for the bicep was torn, and so he relocated it.
Oh, yeah.
He actually completely detached where the bicep attaches and moved it to where you put the pin in for the torn rotator cuff. Which it was very painful. I've got a nice scar on my shoulder from where they went in to do that digging around. It wasn't orthoscopic. They actually opened it up and went in.
Yep. Been there, done that.
And
the nerve is moved.
So the way the recovery is going to go on this is it's going to be at least 3 to 6 months before in 3 months, I'll be back to where I get a good chunk of usefulness out of it, but it's going to be months more of therapy before I regain, full ability to use it.
Well, that sucks.
It does, but it is that the end result is going to be worth it. It's going to be worth the effort I put into making it work.
Yeah, that's the important part. So apart from that, nothing else?
Let's see. I've got the third omnibus for Empire and Audio is out, just came out. The omnibus package for books 1 and 2 of the Humanity Unlimited stuff has been out for a month now. And there's some other things going on behind the scenes that I can't talk about at this point.
Shocking. We all kind of have things.
Staying busy, doing things. When we're done doing the intro for the show, I've got more things to tell you off with patrons can't listen.
Ooh.
Secret things.
Ooh.
But before I can tell you that, we've actually got to get into the meat and bread of this show.
What is this show? What are we doing here? What the hell?
We are going to have an interview with somebody that I've known for a couple of years that's got a Kickstarter running that I think you'll be very interested in hearing about.
Does it involve Disco Stew from The Simpsons?
No, but disco is a part of it.
I'm intrigued and mildly terrified.
You should be. And with that, let's go ahead and get into the interview.
Hold me.
And joining us today, Robert Jeschonek. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Terry and Paul. It's great to be here.
I didn't massacre your name, did I? Because, I'm just terrible with names.
No, you nailed it, man. You really did. You in fact, I think that was one of the best pronunciations I've ever heard. Thank you.
The sad thing is that I can't tell if he's being sarcastic or not, but I'll run with that. I'm going to
just smile and nod, treat it as a compliment, and move on. We don't know his level of satire yet. We'll get there.
Well, thanks for coming on the show, Robert. Why don't you take a moment and introduce yourself to our audience?
Okay. I'm Robert Jeschonek. I'm a USA Today best-selling author of science fiction, comics, mystery, all sorts of fantasy, all kinds of novels and stories. And I've had my work published all over the world. I've won a bunch of awards. And most recently, I've been working on this new Kickstarter project for Space 1995. Sorry, Space
95? I was going to say, that sounds awful recent.
I thought you were going to say Space 1999, and I was like, oh.
Copyright alert.
The whole thing about lawsuit pending, we'll talk to you after the show about this. We might provide you a list of legal counsel you could contact.
What is this
Space
copyright?
1975.
Yeah.
Wow. Talk about a throwback, because that's about the time that I was just getting started reading science fiction.
Yeah. It was a similar time for myself too. That was when I was really starting to deep dive into that world, into that universe, and discovering all the opportunities and all the possibilities, and both in fiction and in the movies. Right, Star Wars, Battlestar Galactica. There were so many great and also cheesy occasionally films. But yeah, it was a great time to be a young fan, a young science fiction fan.
Yeah, that I basically lived in the used bookstore.
Mm-hmm.
Every day I'd be coming home, seeing what kind of new stuff they had at the used bookstore that was between my house and home, so that I could figure out what I'm going to read next.
I'll bet that. I mean, if it was anything like the used bookstores in my town or the library in my town, I'm sure it was a wonderful selection, drawing from things from the 60s and the 50s, even maybe. There was so much. Those decades were so close back then, so there was an abundance of material, so much great stuff, and it all sort of meshed together in my mind and my imagination. I'm guessing in yours as well.
Yeah,
and
I read things like Perry Rodan, the translated space opera from Germany.
Yeah.
The Adventures of Cap Kennedy. Gosh, all kinds of different stuff that nowadays you mention it and people are like, what? What's that? I don't know any of these things.
Doc Savage, one of your faves.
Doc Savage. I was all over Doc Savage back then.
Oh yeah, the Man of Bronze. Yeah, that was great stuff. And it had been around for quite a while by then, right? But but to you it was brand new. To you it was fresh. I know in that same time frame, I really got into John Carter, Warlord of Mars, Burroughs. I found that in a local library, and I to me it was brand new and exciting, and I was like, wow, is this cool? Civil War guy, and he ends up on Mars and Barsoom, sorry, and it was so exciting. But of course, it had been around for a long time. But that's one of the wonderful things about science fiction, about all fiction, of course, and all culture, is that to the newer generation, it's always brand new. It's always new and exciting, and it opens up new possibilities. So, yeah. But I agree.
So what prompted you to do a Kickstarter? I think I already have the answer in my head. I think I already know, but let's ask the question.
That's a great question. I've thought about it for a long time. I ran a Kickstarter a bunch of years ago and it didn't work out so well. So I've always thought I wanted to try it again. And I also had at the same time a concurrent thought that I wanted to do an anthology project, a science fiction anthology. I have some young writers who I've been working with, and I wanted to try to give them some opportunities to get published, and also to bring in some of my favorite authors to work with. So I sort of had those two tracks going on at the same time. And then a guy named Dean Wesley Smith. Started talking.
I've heard the name, I think. Yeah, vaguely familiar.
That guy, the indie publishing powerhouse. Guru, I guess, is also a great way to describe him. And he started talking about it a lot on his blog, and it gave me the thought, maybe I should go this route. And so I started thinking about it and tossing the possibilities around.
On Teachable, he's got a free seminar. I'm not going to call it a workshop, but it's more like a seminar on how to do the basics of a Kickstarter. And I've been perusing that, going, gosh, yeah, I don't know, maybe, because everything that I do in publishing, I can trace back 95% of the way I do things to Dean and Chris, because I paid attention to their blogs beforehand, but I went to their Coast workshop starting in, 2011, when I went to their Think Like a Publisher workshop that they had down there. And so many things that I do now, I either do because they recommended it or because I tried something that they recommended and said it didn't work for me. And I'm doing this other thing, basically just despite Dean, because that's how I am.
You've always been a contrarian.
I am.
Oh my God. He's the curmudgeon. He is the curmudgeon.
I haven't ran into very many things that Dean says that I disagree with or that I have to do differently. Very few things. So it's been an education paying attention to the things that he thinks is important, even the things that I decide in the end aren't for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they've done a lot of good in bringing that kind of teaching to so many people, and to helping to open a lot of authors' eyes to some of the realities, some of the harsh realities of writing and publishing. You know, I know I, for one, was glad to have fair warning going into some of the things I've tried before I got there, that maybe they'd be more difficult than I expected, and that maybe things weren't quite the way they appeared in the media or in things that I had read or heard, right? Like with big publishing companies and agents, literary agents and things like that. You know, you sort of, I don't know about you, but I always thought that things ran a certain way, and Dean and Chris sort of explained that, no, they don't always run that way, and sometimes it's an illusion, and you need to look beyond that. And so that's been a real powerful influence on me.
It was enough of an influence that when they started moving their stuff to Teachable, I went ahead and dropped down the change to become a lifetime workshop and lifetime lecture member.
Ah, good for you.
So now if I only spent more time going through all of the lessons that I have not gone through.
I think you're doing fine the way you are at the moment, Terry.
I'm doing passably well. I can't complain.
But see, now you're sitting there stuck with one hand. So now you can actually take a couple of hours every day and watch that kind of stuff after clicking all day.
Do you know how much stuff that this is an aside here? I'm taking an aside on this one.
I'm shocked.
I'm watching on Masterclass. I'm watching David Baladucci's class on thriller writing right now. But I also have Mark Dawson's advertising course that I picked up that I need to finish going through. There are so many things that I need to do that I have not yet finished, because buying all this education doesn't do you any good if you don't actually take it and consume it.
Yeah. We're on the same wavelength there, Terry, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I bought some courses recently, and I, like yourself, have begun the advertising class from Dawson and the SPF group, and I think it's a fantastic class, but it really does. It's really extensive. There's a lot there, and it takes a real commitment to sit down and get through that, and then to properly absorb it and properly apply it. And wow, there's a lot.
It's almost like you should hire somebody to do all that for you.
Yes.
Curmudgeon in me says no. I have to understand how it works for myself, or I can't monitor someone else doing it.
That wasn't my point. My point was it takes a lot of time consumption to think about all that stuff and keep it going.
One of the things that Dean has mentioned over and over again that I have come to realize more and more as time goes on is that the learning never ends.
Yeah.
When you think you know something, you begin to realize just how much you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of that, Robert, what was the most difficult part of getting the Kickstarter put together?
Everything. All of it.
I am not surprised to hear that.
I was expecting the age-old answer, herding cats.
Well, no, I mean, the author team has been pretty responsive and right on point and helpful. And that's not been the problem. It's just, there's so much that goes into setting up a campaign. And I thought I was prepared for it this time. I viewed Dean's seminar online, and I studied up online, and I even talked to some people who had run successful Kickstarters, but none of it really fully prepared me for the sheer breadth of all the stuff you got to do. It's just, wow.
It sounds like a full-time job, just trying to keep up and set it all up, and then everything else, and then having to interact and deal with the people who are doing stretch goals and all the other great stuff that goes on with it.
Yep.
I've supported a number of Kickstarters over the last 2 years that were basically gaming Kickstarters, RPG Kickstarters, rather than writing ones.
Yeah.
And they can run the gamut of very bare bones to this just outrageous amount of production that goes into making what the consumer sees on the Kickstarter page. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Speaking of, what kind are you going bare bones, or did you do something extravagant?
Well, I don't know, somewhere in the middle. I spent a little money and put in some time on developing a nice video, a smoking video. And I think that came out really well. I think that was worthwhile, but it took effort and it took money. And but I'm really proud of it. And I know it's helping the campaign, because the campaign is continuing to do really, really well. And a lot of people have told me how much they enjoyed the video. We did it we started off with sort of like a grand science fiction outer space shot with big supers, big chyrons over the background. And then we had a record skip. And then we went into 1970s disco style music.
Yes, baby.
Space opera in 1970s. And it was a lot of fun. And so, so I think that part was a little bit extravagant, and but other than that, I think, it's pretty basic. We put the text on the screen and came up with the rewards and tried to be creative with those. I think we came up with some cool rewards. And so, but yeah, I know what you're talking about, Paul. Like some Kickstarters, they have a lot of graphics and a lot of high production values.
Yes. Extra stories, bonus recordings, all this other stuff. And it's like, my God.
And the thing is, once you start getting into that, I mean, it can really bring in people if you can find your base, if you can find your peeps out there. But then it can also cost you money and time later.
Right.
And it can also put up the amount that you have to bring in. So yeah, it's tricky. It really is. And boy, that was like a major stressor as well, was trying to come up with the funding goal, figuring out exactly how much to ask, because if you go too high, then you might discourage people from backing you. They might say, this is never going to make it. $50,000, come on.
We've all
how much is Brandon Sanderson raised now?
Yeah. Well, I have no idea about that, but we've all seen Kickstarters that they've set their goal too high and didn't make it.
Right. Right.
But you also have to worry about the other end. If you set it too low, you can't actually pay for the product.
Yep, exactly. So you got your fixed costs. If you're doing an anthology like this, you have to pay the authors, and you have to pay for the cover artwork, unless you're generating something yourself off of whatever, some little scribble or something.
I think he's been looking at my covers.
I wasn't going to say anything, but now that you mention it.
Your covers are great, Terry. Some of them on bookmarks and things around here from that I picked up the last time we were together, actually.
My wife does those covers. She goes and gets stock art and puts it all together. So our covers are actually that kind of shoestring, put things together ourselves sort of thing.
Well, that's great, but you're still paying something for that stock art, I'm sure. And
yeah,
her time
the licensing is pretty inexpensive for that.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly it's my wife's time and her having to put up with me going, I think I'd rather move this over here. I think I'd rather do this.
If you asked her how much that costs or is worth their art, I'll bet it's pretty steep.
Probably so.
As many writing partners, so to speak, writing business partners, whatever you want to call it, that are out there, it seems like I hear very few real successes, and this is probably why. I don't think you should live with your editor, and I don't think you should live with your designer.
Yeah, my wife and I decided I decided that it wouldn't be great for her to be redlining and editing my stuff. So I went to somebody else because she's too rough. She hurt my feelings.
Oh my God. Oh man.
My wife is also my first reader. Yeah. And she's pretty, she's pretty stern in her admonitions when necessary. And yeah, it creates some awkward moments sometimes. I come trudging down the steps and I'm like, really?
I hate you so much. Why did you do this? Is my favorite part of that book. Oh, you're horrible person.
True story.
I don't know if I go that far.
You mentioned Brandon Sanderson earlier, Paul, and I think that's a good one there because that certainly got everybody's attention on the fiction side of Kickstarter at that. I know that it got Dean's attention, and I had seen it somewhere else just before that and had no idea that a Kickstarter for a book could go that high.
Yeah.
People want the collection, man. They want the heirloom that's going to be sitting up, gathering dust, but wow, is it really cool?
I think it's really exciting that he retained those rights so that he could do that himself.
Yeah.
Very forward thinking.
Oh, big time. Big time. Didn't he bring in millions of dollars on that one? I don't know.
It was over 5 million when I saw it. So I'm not sure how much it ended up getting.
The goal was what, 250, and they just completely blew through that immediately.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. He did an amazing job. Talk about production values. And the quality of the product too, and he was able to demonstrate how wonderful those books would look when they were done.
He's done other books. He's done other 10-year anniversary books. So this is not his first rodeo for producing these quality books. This is just his first Kickstarter for doing them.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it was amazing. It was really inspiring to see, and yeah, that did motivate me as well somewhat. I didn't think I'd come in at that level, so that'd be great. But that wasn't what I was shooting for. But I did think, there are possibilities, so maybe I should be exploring them more aggressively. And then I was trying to think, well, why not? And what could we do this? What theme could we pursue in this project? And I don't know. I have just an interesting point of view sometimes, and I started thinking about maybe dipping into another decade as far as thematic content, cultural references, and historical references and things. And it just I was thinking of Space 1999, and it just came into my mind, Space 1975.
Speaking of, what were the actual constraints for the anthology, for stories in the anthology? Apart from the 70s nostalgia, what else?
We have it pretty wide open. I mean, we want it to be space opera. So I guess that's the key restraint. Okay. It has to be in the space opera genre. So, but that in itself is very wide open, right? I mean,
yeah. Oh yeah.
Go anywhere with that. You have very few limitations. I'm just watching this cat walking across the screen. As I'm talking, there's I don't know what your language.
For those of you playing the drinking game at home,
I'm not gonna talk butt.
We've had 2 cat sightings. 2.
It's hard to stay on a serious train of thought when there's a cat
butt sticking in your face. Yeah, pretty difficult. Yeah. So you were saying thematic elements were open, like arch villain cats in disco suits. Yeah.
Well, and the cool thing is, like, the author team that we have is such that I know that they will produce something professional, of high professional quality, and they are not afraid to go in weird directions or cool directions, and they can take these kind of guidelines that are very open, very broad, and they can produce something magical and goofy, and yet with maybe a serious underpinning. something that, has a strong character arc, and that they're going to deliver it. And that's so I knew I could be kind of broad in the guidelines and know that I'm going to get really awesome stories.
For some reason, Space 1999 Space Station popped into my head with a 1970s disco wearing Kojak's type person.
Moonbase Alpha was the word you're looking for.
There we go, Moonbase Alpha with Kojak running around. Telly Savalas wearing one of those suits with the lollipop. I just, oh my God. Or Beretta.
Space 1999. Wasn't that late 60s?
No,
didn't that come in late 60s?
It was
maybe early 70s.
Yeah, man. I think it was 76 and
76. Yeah, because it came out. It came out just about the same time Star Wars did.
Yeah,
pretty close to it. I think
Star Wars was 77, and that was, of course, the era of Star Trek's big success.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And that's when it really
started in 75.
Mm-hmm.
There you go, 75. Yeah,
those syndicated reruns, which is what turned me around. That's what really blew my mind. So to me, I always associate Star Trek with the 70s.
So I always associate science fiction with the 70s for a lot of reasons, but I think that's because when I was in Canada, Space 1999 was always on in the afternoon on Saturdays.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd be 5 years old, 6 years old, watching all the cool stuff
Martin
there.
Landau, Barbara Bain. Come on.
Awesome. It was awesome to a 6-year-old. Now I think I would have to commit seppuku, but still.
I actually have Space 1999 on DVD. I really should watch it. In my really a lot of spare time that I have when I should be doing other things. I should be watching
Terry, what you should do with that is turn it on and put it in the background just as sound, so you could just hear how bad the acting really is.
I went back and watched the initial episode again just last year.
Nuclear explosion moves moon out of orbit.
It's wait, what? It's a magnetic radiation. No, it's not magnetic radiation. That's not a thing. Maybe it is. I guess there's a lot of things in the 1970s for science fiction that isn't necessarily scientifically accurate.
It's reality completely and totally. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Talk about throwing the rules out the window, right? The laws of physics. Yeah, there's then what is this? Is it a solar system or a galaxy?
That moon that is accelerating out of our solar system, it's going to visit a new solar system every week. We're going to forget about how far apart they are.
Yeah.
I'm sure somebody out there ran the calculations to figure out just how much energy you would need to move something that massive.
Oh, absolutely.
I think they would have squished them flat.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, not only that, but as it would come upon these inhabited worlds, why didn't it just tear the heck out of their gravity system? Why didn't it just cause total mayhem?
It's like billiard balls, planets knocked out of orbits. It would be terrible.
Dogs and cats doing disco, mass hysteria.
People would not want to see that thing coming toward them. I mean, and you think it's like an ass, like it's going to hit you. It's going to hit the planet.
And if it's moving at relativistic speeds, think about how fast it's going to shoot through these. I mean, they portrayed it as in, days going through the solar system. No, it's not. You're going to be going through there in minutes.
We are now
going to be flying through there pretty fast.
Skeptics podcast, which is going to rip apart and tear apart everything.
I think we need to go ahead and pull back from science. Let's pull back from science. Because this is the 1970s we're talking about here. We just need to stop.
I recently saw Saturn V again. Oh, okay. Recognition.
What did you think about that this time, like on your second view after all this time has passed?
It is surprisingly dark for the era that is in. It's got some cheesy components, but the world that they don't tell you about is, in my estimation, much more interesting than the world they're in. If that makes any sense, because of how the moon stations are set up and the Harvey Keitel's character, what that person is really supposed to do is still kind of rattling around in my head. How do you put that person in that station? Because wow. Anyway, yeah, it was still kind of one of those movies where it's like, wow, I can see where they were going, and there's actually some pretty neat concepts in there. But of course, the science, the special effects just don't hold up. God, they're horrible. They're just awful.
Well, and that came after Star Wars. What didn't it? Wasn't it 1980? I think
it was 79, 80. It was 79. It was during Farrah Fawcett's heyday. So
yeah.
So it's got Harvey Keitel, Kirk Douglas, and Farrah Fawcett, and they're pretty much the only people in the movie.
Mm-hmm. So that was the era of ILM, right? Industrial Light and Magic, and Douglas Trumbull and those guys, Dijkstra and those guys, and yet it was they didn't spend the extra money, or maybe they couldn't get ILM. I don't know, hard to say.
They did a pretty good job with the bot, but the other effects were just god awful. They look like they were filmed on a Lego set.
You start talking about the bot, and that makes me think of a Black Hole.
Yeah. Vincent.
Yeah.
And Maximilian.
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's another
example of 70s sci-fi right there. I don't know when it was done, but it's definitely in the style of the 70s.
That was 78, 79, I think, maybe 80, maybe.
I think you're right. I think it was 79.
A lot of stuff came out in 79. 79 was 77 through 79 was a seminal era for horror science fiction.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things to consume during those years. During that decade, it was really big to consume all kinds of science fiction during then. It was a great time to be a science fiction consumer.
Yeah. Oh, it really was. And it made it. Oh, and then Star Trek the Motion Picture too in 1979.
Star Trek the Motionless Picture. Yep.
And yes, we can agree.
It was a different time. It was a different time, and they were trying for a different effect, and it didn't work. But you just got to accept it. With Star Trek movies, it's pretty much hit or miss. About 50% of them were good.
It came out the same month as Superman, the motion picture.
Yeah.
Came out the same month.
Which was another. I mean, it's easy now to look back at these movies and maybe scoff a bit if they're somewhat lesser production values or lower script quality or what have you. But at the time, wow! I mean, when Superman the movie came out, that was groundbreaking. Really, it was a great movie to me at that time. I just loved it.
The miniseries.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I really wanted to like that show.
I did love it. I loved that show. I really did. Cheese and all, I loved it.
It jumped the shark for me at some point. When was that? 13, 14? It jumped the shark for me, and I was just like, yeah, fuck this.
I think you should go back and watch it again. I really do. I know they tried to do a remake of it, but I don't recall that I ever saw the remake. I'm not sure what I would have thought of it, but I somehow missed it.
It's on Netflix, I think, or Amazon, one of the two.
I didn't see that. I did recently see the War of the Worlds, though, that was on some. Let's not go down that road.
Don't go down that road. Don't go down that road. It's a Tom Cruise movie. Don't go there. Don't go there.
God.
I was going to ask which version, the original black and white one, or the Abomination. Which one?
This is a new series, a brand new, and not the series from the 80s that was based on it. This is a new one, and it's an international production with an international cast, which is not in itself a bad thing. But this show was really, really excruciatingly, boringly slow. So bad. Oh, I crawled at a snail's. It was so awful. And as you guys know, from when you write something or produce something, you want to come out of the gate strong. You want to catch those viewers or readers. And this just made no attempt. It was just slow and dead on arrival.
That's unfortunate.
I don't recommend it.
Wow, I wouldn't have expected that after that glowing review. It's kind of like Terry's books, Guy keeps reading them, giving them 1 stars. Yeah.
Speaking of that reminds me of another big disappointment in the 70s. Well, actually, I think it's close enough. Well, we had the original Battlestar Galactica series, which had its ups and downs, but at the time was, wow, great.
Battlestar Galactica 1980. Boom, crash.
Yeah. And then they came up with, Galactica 1980.
Oh God, please no!
It was horrible.
Oh,
I tried to sit through 1 episode of that and went no.
I watched all of the episodes because I had to, basically. So yeah.
Yep. I just remember, and I was pretty young at the time, and I just put my head in my hands. I was just like, oh man, what?
What were they smoking?
Yeah. It was awful, just awful. But they did have Lauren Green in it, I guess. So.
Was he actually in that?
Sort of. He was in there, but he was more like the grandfather figure as opposed to doing things. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That just sounds horrible. All right, writers, don't do this. Do not do what we're describing. Don't do it.
But overall, I mean, we're making an excellent point, which is, as you guys have said, that there was a lot of science fiction product to consume in that time frame.
Yeah, Logan's Run too.
God, I loved Logan's Run, the movie.
I did too.
Have you read the books?
No.
I've read the 3 books that Nolan wrote. They are almost nothing like the movie that was produced.
I'm shocked.
And they were great. They were a wonderful bit of science fiction that I consumed when I was a kid.
Wow. I'll have to check them out.
They were amazing. They're little bitty thin books, just like you saw back in in that time frame.
The novellas, essentially, right? Like 40,000.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And while the character is there, the events are not the same. The type of things that happen are not the same. The world is not limited to one city. There are other things going on. It's a bigger scope than what they had. But the movie was focused in on something very specific. And the books did so as well, but just in a different way. And I think one of the other, I'm now having trouble remembering which. One of them, the rebirth was at 21 and the other one was at 30. And I can't remember now which one it was.
The books were 21.
Probably so.
The books were 21.
It was a much faster pace for that in the books then.
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that concept recently in light of recent pandemical events, without going down any kind of political roads. But, you reach a certain age and, oh, well.
Yeah, I mean, when you've got limited space, limited resources, you're going to have to cut the cord at some point. So where do you do that? And how does that work? And how arbitrary are the rules? And can they be gamed? And who's gaming them? And yada, 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 yada. The plot threads explode.
Before I drag us back to the Kickstarter, I went ahead and read the novelization of Buck Rogers in the 24th century.
I have that book.
not Doug,
radically different.
Not Duck
than
Dodgers
anything that was in any of the television series. I loved the book. I love the television series too. I mean, who doesn't like Buck Rogers? Wilma Deering. Who? What's not to love there?
Princess Ardala.
That was the only thing she was ever in as an actress. Did you know that?
No. Really?
She was not an actress.
That's not true. She was in my dreams on several occasions.
She was in what?
My dreams on several occasions.
I'm sorry, that was not syndicated. Your dreams were never syndicated. This is probably a good thing because it would have to be on Skinemax.
You're right. I was like, 13 at the time? Yeah, okay.
She basically slungshot me through puberty at that point. Like, yes, Princess Ardala.
Wow.
Yeah. Gil Gerard, though, as Buck Rogers. Wow.
Yeah.
It was something that growing up in that era, it shaped what you thought about that sort of thing.
Yes.
And they had the actor on one of the episodes in there. They had Buster Crabbe in there.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, that
which was also
that was the one where all the pilots got sick.
And they had to bring in the old guard.
I remember that, and I haven't seen this in how many years? That's just
come on. You watched it because Tweaky. Just admit it. That's why you watched Buck Rogers.
Yeah, they had more personality than the rest of the actors.
Okay, Tweaky is the space where we have to go dragging ourselves back to the Kickstarter.
No, actually, no. That's a really good point because I do have to ask this question: what from the 70s do you think most influenced you as an author? And it can't just be a series. What more specific than that? What kind of tech or social thing that you saw do you think had the most effect on you growing as a writer into the genre?
Wow, that's a great question. I probably, honestly, the books that I read in that period were probably most. And you know what? That would be the James Blish Star Trek adaptations. That really shaped me as a writer. Absolutely, because that's where I started with Star Trek. And maybe I'm betraying my younger age, perhaps. But I didn't start watching the show first. I started reading the books, and I love James Blish's work. And that's and then Alan Foster on the animated adaptations. So that probably had the biggest impact on shaping me as a writer because I read those books multiple times. But then also at that time I read Bradbury and Asimov, Foundation, Herbert, Dune. I mean, I was a Dune fanatic. And,
oh, you were one of those people.
Yeah.
One of those people. You Fremen lover. Fremen lover.
The spice must flow.
The words must flow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, that probably had the biggest, oh, wow, Logan's Search.
It's not the first book, but it was right there on my shelf, so I knew that I could find it.
John Eric. Oh, okay. Mordred.
Sequel to the Buck Rogers novel that I was talking about. I've got to find the original copies to each of them. But my shelf is filled with books from that I collected when I was that age that are in horrible, terrible shape because I've read them into pieces.
As they were meant to be read. Truly.
So what from the Star Trek books, though, what exactly, what was it that kind of pinged with you?
Just as I said, I hadn't watched the show when I started reading those books, and yet Blish did a great job, even in very brief snippets, really, because he did books of adaptations of the episodes, and each adaptation was pretty short. You know, it's like reading a short story.
Yeah.
Each time, and nevertheless, he brought through the incredible characters at the core of that show, and their relationship and their representation of different aspects of humanity, and also the thematic elements of the different episodes. I'm not talking about all the season 3 stuff where we went down into some crazy rabbit holes, like the Way to Eden with the space hippies and Spock's brain. No, it didn't happen. But some of the other stuff was strong. You know, speaking of societies in which people get sick at a certain age and they just go away, the episode Miri from season 1, in which all the young people survived, but all the old people had died out, and then as soon as you got to a certain age, you were gone. So stuff like that really it had a strong impact on me. That was really my first really powerful impact from science fiction, and then from there on, I went out and sought out what you would consider the classic stuff.
Gotcha. Cool. Terry, are you there? Terry froze.
I've heard that this happens to him sometimes.
He needs a mesh network. Or he needs a network. He needs to actually get a better set of tin cans, but
I thought this was a kind of a performance anxiety thing.
It could be. He could be back there just kind of like shaking the modem, going, "Oh God, what do I do? What do I do? I don't want to answer this question. I have no train of thought. It's still boarding at the station. What do I do? What do I do?"
This is the day that he knew was coming. He's seen it coming toward him for a long.
He's back.
It looks like my connection is flaky at this moment, so I may vanish again. What did I cut out in the middle of?
I have no idea. We lost it. We were too busy making fun of you.
Oh, well, don't let me slow you down from making fun of me.
Man, there's today's bumper.
Back in the late 70s, I was the Star Trek book that had an impact on me was Price of the Phoenix.
Yeah.
Because it was so radically different than any of the other Star Trek I had ever consumed.
In what way?
Yeah, that was
it
an awesome
was book. Definitely, it's hard to describe. The characters were a lot, maybe they were outside their comfort zones, very far outside their comfort zones. James Kirk wasn't necessarily, the hero of doing this. He was the guy that was being run over by the truck.
Yep.
Several times run over by the truck. When there's a character in that, his name was Black Ohm.
Yep.
And he was not a friend of the Federation, but he was relatable. You could sympathize with where he was coming from. There were so many shades of gray in those 2 books in that series, in that particular mini series, that I think that it's some of the best Trek ever written.
Yeah, I agree. I also liked all our. Well, what was the book that was based on All Our Yesterdays? I can't remember now. I'm blanking on this. There were 2 books. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, there were some really great Star Trek novels that came out in that time frame as well. They really started up that line toward the end of the 70s, as Star Trek: The Motion Picture was coming out. Roddenberry wrote the adaptation, right? Or he wrote the adaptation. I'm not sure which. And then Pocket started up their Timescape line. And but Bantam was putting out the novels before that. That's what Price of the Phoenix was from, was that line. We had some
God,
great fiction back then.
throwing around these old names that don't really exist in the same way they used to.
Yeah. Boy, things have changed so much, right?
Well, it's only been, what, 50 years? 45, 50 years now? Yeah.
To me, it seems like only yesterday.
Yeah.
All our yesterdays.
Yes.
For those of you playing at home, that's 4 cat sightings.
Yeah.
4 different cats now.
How many cats are romping in your studio there, by the way? I'm just curious.
4.
4. Okay.
We've seen them all.
They've all made an appearance one way or the other.
Is this like a regular? I mean, I haven't seen every episode of the show. Is this a standard thing? Like
it is
cats up here?
Some of the listeners have started a drinking game where if a cat is sighted, then they have to drink. So we feel really badly for those folks because they're alcoholics now.
Or they're just dead.
So did you write a short story for the anthology as well?
I'm going to, but I have not yet. I've been too busy struggling to put it all together and to keep pushing it forward. And that has been a mountain of work. It might not look like much when you look at the
deadline's approaching, man. Deadline's approaching.
You know, we backed into talking about the Kickstarter. Why don't you take a moment to go ahead and make a pitch for the Kickstarter? That might be a better sort of thing to do here than backing around it.
In the back of my mind, I'm like sort of counting down. I'm like thinking, well, when are they going to cut me off here? And yet I'm enjoying the conversation so much. I could talk all day with you guys, actually, I think.
That's a problem.
About
these kind of things. You should get therapy for that. Anyway.
Yeah, it's happening right now. It's running through September 1st. We are at 55% funded right now, and we have a pretty good head of steam, I think. And we're looking forward to hitting that 100% mark and then exceeding that going into the stretch goals as of September 1st. We've got some great authors who are on board with this project. And speaking of Star Trek, one of the writers who's on board is Mark Scott Zicree, who's a Hollywood author and director and producer, big-time screenwriter. He actually has written a bunch of Star Trek: The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine episodes over the years, including the story on which what's that episode? Far Beyond the Stars was based in Deep Space Nine, and that's considered one of the best, if not the best, episode of Deep Space Nine, and maybe of almost any Star Trek other than the original season 1 or 2.
Gosh, DS9 had so many great episodes. I don't know that I remember that one in specific, but that's a high bar.
Oh, you remember it, I'm sure. It's the one where they had Avery Brooks as Benny, who was a science fiction writer in the 1950s.
Oh yeah, I remember that. He was
facing up to racism and trying to figure out how to get his vision brought forward, and he thought he kept flashing forward into the world of Deep Space Nine. Anyway, it was really well received, and it's continued to gain a lot of attention in the years since. So yeah, the Mark is on board with this. He also does a show called Space Command, which is you can view it online through YouTube. So he's doing, and he's got a lot of former Star Trek actors and actors from other science fiction series involved in that. So it's pretty cool. So he's on board, and Dean Wesley Smith, who we spoke of earlier, he's part of this team. And Peter David, who's a really well-known comic book writer and also science fiction author and fantasy author. He co-created the show Space Cases with Bill Mumy from Lost in Space. And he's on board. We've got Ian Douglas, who's also known as William H. Keith, and he's a military and space opera writer, a science fiction writer. He's written a ton of stuff, and he's part of the team. And we've got, oh my God, just one person. Oh, Kat Rambo, Nebula award-winning author, Kat Rambo. And she was also for a while the president of SIFLA. Mm-hmm. So she's on board with this. And we've got Craig Martell of the 20 Books to 50K organization. He's a major science fiction indie author today. And let's see, Mark Leslie Lefebvre, who's also a writer and science fiction writer, and he was nominated for an Aurora Award in Canada a couple of years back. He's part of the team. Ron Collins, who's written the Stealing the Sun series. He's written a lot of science fiction. He's part of the team. And Annie Reed, another high-level writer. So these are all professional writers. Blaze Ward, we brought on board as well. He's another sci-fi indie guy. So we've got this great team of writers, and they are going to just produce some of the finest work of their careers related to space opera in the 1970s. And I know it's going to be a lot of fun. And I keep telling everybody, and I mean this, even if I weren't involved in the Kickstarter, which I am, I would still want to read this darn book, because these guys are all excellent writers, and I just can't wait to see what ideas they come up with and how they riff on this theme and how they pull it all together. It's going to be a great project. So I hope folks will jump in and back it and help push us over the top and into the stretch goals, so we can get all the authors involved, because some of them are stretch goal authors. And I'm really excited. We have some great rewards, including copies of the paperback, copies of the hardback. We also have some Tuckerizations available, so you can get your name in a story as a character. And we also have a digital crate of material, which you can't find anywhere else. Rare stuff from each of the authors in the set, which frankly, to me, is worth it in itself, worth being part of this group. Or
I'm trying to remember now, was that, there was something when I was reading the description of it that I wasn't sure what it was. It didn't, I don't know. I don't know that it said it was a crate. It said it was something, some type of set of extras, but I can't remember now what it said. Now I have to look.
Could it be the Pet Disco Ball?
VIP group membership is what it was. But I had no idea what that was.
That's an online group, that we're putting together, and it's exclusive. And you can only get into this group if you pledge to the project, and then we're going to present material there that you can't get anywhere else as well. So, yeah.
Any examples of what type of material might be presented there? Because when I looked at it, I couldn't really determine what VIP membership was.
Yeah, I haven't really nailed down exactly what's going to be in that.
It's a secret.
But everybody has said they're willing to contribute content. So I suspect there will be some writings of some kind, and some images, no doubt. Maybe some cool photos, maybe some, I don't know, some different things related to the project, maybe a diary of putting together the project, just different things that you can't get elsewhere.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah. If the cover does not have a Cylon doing Saturday Night Fever, you have done yourself wrong. Wrong, I tell you.
That would be awesome. I would love that. Yep.
Just shaking his head.
That red light would fit right in with the multicolored lights of the dance floor.
Exactly. It'd be perfect, man. You could actually have the light, his light be a disco ball. You could actually have that on there, and there are so many cool ideas here.
Yep. Oh, there really are. I mean, there were so many things just on the cultural level. There's just so many crazy and interesting things that were of their time. Elements of fashion, or TV, or movies, or books, or music itself. When you start to look at the music that came out of that era, it's astounding. The breadth of different genres that came out of there, that really, where you really saw a growth in the genre, and you really saw some cool stuff. Or if you didn't like that genre, it was prominent. There was a lot that happened. There was glam rock, there was hard rock, there was the start of metal, really, and also the start of rap and hip hop, and
70s
disco. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot that came out of that time period. So that in itself, I mean, it was really a golden age for rock, which we don't always remember, and sometimes in our condemnation of different stuff that came out of that period. But
it's hair metal, man. That's all we really need is hair metal.
I am going to start throwing things at the screen very, very soon.
I'm actually being not sarcastic, because I love a lot of hair metal bands. So there you go.
Yeah, there was just so much cool stuff, and it was unique to its time, a lot of it. And though some of it was some of those things were the seeds of things that became big later in different ways that evolved. I mean, back then they were in their purest form. And
sadly, I've discovered that going back earlier than that, when I started reading, a lot of the stuff I read was from the late 30s or late 20s, early 30s, E. Doc Smith, and a lot of his original stuff, a lot of pulp from back in that era, because that was very common as far as still having books floating around, having been reprinted around those times.
Yeah.
God, they're so dated, but they have they have set me up for the type of author that I am just by the tone of the stories rather than the content. Because if you go back and look at the content now, you just have to cover your eyes and go, it was a different time. You just have to accept it was a different time.
Yeah.
And try to pull what you can salvage out of the stories as far as enjoyment. I don't recommend rereading something that old because it's not going to meet up with your expectations.
But the energy.
That's putting it mildly. That's putting it mildly. The fearlessness, I think, is what you miss.
Yeah.
The fearlessness in we don't give a crap if this is even remotely scientifically possible. We're just here to tell a cool story with cool gadgets and cool aliens and, you know, screw physics.
John Norman's Gore novels? Is that right? John Norman? Now I can't remember if that's the right author name, but there was a whole series of Gore novels that were abound back then that was talking about an alternate Earth that was on the other side of the sun. You just didn't care if it was scientifically even possible. Who cares? As long as you can just go ahead and do a little hand wavium, it doesn't matter.
A lot of hand wavium. Holy crap, a lot of hand wavium. And we all have used hand wavium before.
Oh, yeah.
It's always happened.
Yeah.
The 70s was notorious for hand wavium.
Definitely.
God, Terry's going back to his book collection.
Uh-oh. Oh, yeah, Gore.
John Norman. I was right. That was him.
John, I haven't read those books, but I'm familiar with them. I mean, they were around a lot back then, actually.
They were around a lot. Now I'm going to look at the seat here. The fact that the price says it's 75 cents tells me that this is pretty old here. Done by Ballantine. When was it done?
That was the cover price?
1966.
Wow.
And I know for a fact, having read a lot of these books when I was younger, there is content in there that is not acceptable today.
Sure.
Not acceptable today. But I'm going to reread it anyway, and I'm just going to go ahead and cover my eyes when I get to the parts that I'm not supposed to go ahead and like, because I want to reread the stories that I grew up with. And I'll just have to learn to accept that it was a different time.
Yeah. That's a whole other conversation right there. We could talk all day about that.
That's 3 or 4 different symposiums.
Yeah.
So what is space opera your favorite genre, so to speak?
You know, I'd have to say it's one of them. Yeah, it's probably right up there for me. I mean, I like to write a lot of different things. I like to write a variety of genres. But yeah, that might be my favorite because I'm addicted to hand wavium, actually. You know, my particular, I'm mainlining that shit. You know, it's just, it's
join the club and I won't hold it against you.
There you go.
Oh, God.
Look at that Baggin, right? Last Son of Krypton.
Speaking of hand wavy,
have you ever read this book?
I know I have.
I did, yeah.
It has nothing at all to do with the movie that was done. The novelization has the same characters, and that's it. And one of the things I loved about the novelization of this was one of the point of view characters in it was Lex Luthor. And the world portrayed by Lex Luthor is an interesting place. Let's just put it that way.
Mr. Luthor, Mr. Luthor.
He is not that Lex Luthor.
Ned Beatty.
He is not that Lex Luthor.
Oh, that part of the movie was so damn funny. North, Miss Tessmacher, north.
In that, if I remember this book right, it's been that long since I've read this book as well. But if I remember right, Superman is kind of a blockhead in this novel. And Lex Luthor is just, all he can do is just shake his head. I just can't understand how you keep winning. I just cannot understand how you keep winning.
That's a great twist.
Wile E. Coyote and the Roadrunner, it never gets old. Never gets old.
That was one of the interesting things in that time period. Adaptations, and of course it's not unique to that time period, but adaptations were not always very faithful to the source material and sometimes not faithful at all. Whether they were prose fiction or comics, they would just come up, and often it was because, of course, they were working from an outdated script or version of the movie, negative or something. But nevertheless, sometimes it was rather difficult to get my head around when I'd read an adaptation in book form.
Cognitive dissonance, yes.
Like, where was this scene? I don't remember this at all.
If I remember from Last Son of Krypton, Lex Luthor and Superman are forced to go off planet to do something and work as an unwilling partnership. And somewhere along the way, Superman is disabled and taken out of the equation. And it falls to Lex Luthor to finish saving Earth. And the entire way, he's just, what a blockhead. What a blockhead.
And then it makes you wonder just how much of a unreliable narrator he is.
Oh, yeah.
Or if look at it this way, how much of an unreliable narrator would Superman be if the book is accurate and the portrayal in the movies is not?
Exactly. And that's also what I'm talking about. It'd be really funny to see that story from both sides and which details they omit versus which they include and how they tell those types of stories. That would be really damn funny.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome. That would make the best unreliable narrator of all time, though. A supervillain sitting there recounting their battles, saying stuff that you just kind of, the reader looks at it like, you get occasionally the hint that this person is not really all put together.
I think it would be a lot funner if you're watching the story told by the supervillain and it's more like a resistance guerrilla fighter as opposed to a supervillain.
Yeah, what's their goal? To beat the superheroes, because the superhero.
I'm trying to save the people of Earth from the domination of these supers.
Yes, there you go. We're here to chase off the gods. We're gonna get new gods. You're gonna like us gods better, I promise.
The villain is the hero of his own story.
Exactly.
If you're gonna write a villain, that's a great point. As writers, we've all got to keep in mind they've got to have their own motivations. And they can't be something that is just because I'm mustache twitching.
Yeah.
It can't be that. It's got to be something that they're the hero of their own story. Even if it's a very crass and shallow story, they've got to have their own motivations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's interesting. That's what gives, when you add those levels and those twists and those turns, while still remaining within the ballpark of what you have laid down originally and remaining within the ballpark of the genre and the tropes and reader expectations to a point. That's what makes it interesting and fun.
Reader expectations.
If you watch the whole Marvel set of movies, which I know Paul stopped a lot about Ant-Man. I think that he hadn't seen anything since then.
Wait,
the only thing I've seen since the first Avengers movie was probably Black Panther.
Wow. Dude.
Probably.
Huh.
I just got burned out. I'm just sick of superheroes in general. I'm just kind of done.
I know what you're saying. I do, but
there's like one out every 3 months, and it's kind of like I just don't give a shit.
Yeah. I have to agree that there is, we are overloaded with that particular genre right now. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's oversaturation, which is why I think we're going to see something completely different come out in the next couple of years. And what's going to be interesting, really, is how the COVID thing is going to change how that entertainment gets produced and how often it comes out.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting back here going, yeah, those $1 billion blockbusters, that certainly is a lot of people sitting together for months at a time. Yeah.
Streaming, it's the future, baby.
Yeah, except the actors can't stream to one another. That's not true, though, because they did do that on an Apple TV episode of the Ravens Banquet, whatever their show is that's about a game company. They did a special episode that was all done streaming. So they were all like on a Zoom conversation and did the acting and everything else through the Zoom. It was hilarious.
It was
very well done.
Okay, because I've seen some other shows do similar episodes, and I've grown very tired of them, and they weren't as funny as that one sounds.
Oh, this one was good. Oh, it was good. It was insane. It was ridiculous. I loved it. Anyway,
but what I was saying with the Marvel thing is with a snap of a finger, killing off half the universe. He was trying to save something.
Mm-hmm.
It was not, anybody else's idea of being the hero of any story, but in his mind, he was doing it for a reason that was worthwhile and noble.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dr. Freeze
No.
trying to, revitalize his wife. That's the whole reason he's stealing everything.
Oh, well, yeah, that's true. That's true. It's you've got to have the characters, the villains, they've got to have a reason for doing things that goes beyond the surface level.
Except the Joker. He is a special
he's insane
exception. Yeah, he's completely nuts.
That's actually going beyond right there. He's a whack job, and watching how crazy he can be and just how random is part of the joy of watching the Joker.
Right, but he doesn't. Yeah, that's why he doesn't fit into the normal villain pattern. He is that kind of character is off on its own because you never know what it's going to do.
Yeah, which is part of the joy of that character.
Hell yeah. It's kind of like if you put an alien on one of your spaceships and they have a completely different culture and have it meshed, you have no idea what kind of things they're going to bump up against. And excuse me, who might get nailed or whatever. I'm being cat attacked at the moment. I don't think you guys can see this.
We can't.
I did just recently finish watching The Joker starring Joaquin Phoenix.
That wasn't okay. What was your
I'm going to lay it on the line. Okay. I know that movie was highly regarded by a lot of folks and it made a lot of money. And I could appreciate the work that went into it. I appreciated Phoenix's performance. He did, you could see him becoming this other person, this other character. And I admired some of the craftsmanship, but I didn't enjoy watching it. That was my feeling. It was just so down and so dark. And I like dark, but it was just really, I don't know. That was my opinion. What about you guys?
You're muted, Paul. We can't hear you.
I blame you, Shadow. I had kind of the same reaction to a certain extent. But the acting was so incredible. And then when you start getting into the twists and turns that you should have seen coming.
Yeah.
And then you see where it goes from there. It was just like, yeah, this is a completely believable breakdown of that character and a rebirth. And yeah, it is. The last 30 minutes is pretty tough to watch, but it's worth it because what you see in him getting to the end of his story was pretty incredible. But it is not a date movie.
Or if it's a date, it's one of those dates.
It's one of those dates. Yeah, an old married couple date.
Birds of Prey. Have you seen that?
It's on my DVR. What's the word?
It was an amazing movie, I think.
Whoa.
One of the things, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it's got multiple characters that are portraying things in this. It took me 2/3 of the movie to realize this, but if you watch what's going on in the movie, the flavor is different for every point of view character. When you're watching things from one, the events are colored by them. Even the way they're portrayed are colored by them. When you're looking at stuff that has your insane character, things are a little bit crazy that are going on, just a little bit. When you're looking at it from the ex-cop vigilante's point of view, things are different. When you're looking at it from the assassin's point of view, things are different. And it took me 2/3 of the movie to realize that they were subtly shading everything that you were seeing based on who the point of view was. So that's my advice to you when you finally get around to watching it. That may just be me. Maybe it was just me that thinks that, but keep that in mind when you're watching it. That your perception of what's going on is being colored by the unfaithful narrator.
Gee, I wonder who's unreliable. Is Harley Quinn an unreliable narrator? I'm so shocked that you would question the veracity of anything she says.
I'm going to move that up in my queue. Thanks for the recommendation. I got another one too. I know this isn't a movie podcast necessarily, but Jojo Rabbit.
Oh yes. Jojo Rabbit's insane.
Great movie.
I don't know if I've seen that.
See it.
I don't know if I've even heard of it. Tell me just a little bit about it.
It's about a 10-year-old kid who joins the Nazi youth because his father went off to the war and didn't come back. He joins the Hitler Youth. It's 1945, by the way. And his imaginary friend is Hitler.
Definitely haven't seen that one. I would remember that. It
is a roller coaster ride, but the first 20 minutes will have you laughing so hard you're going to have a hernia. You're going to have it is just a ridiculous. The first 30 minutes are so endearing and so insane that you're just, it prepares you for all the stuff that's going to come ahead, which is awkwardly funny and then downright dark. But it's a really well done movie. It was independent and it is just amazing. Just absolutely amazing.
Scarlett Johansson, without giving anything away.
Yeah.
Incredible performance, I thought.
Everybody in that movie did great.
Yeah, Terry, you definitely need to see that one. It's wonderful.
We saw it in the theater.
I'll put it on my list.
And it all comes together too. I mean, everything pays off. You know, it's just a great screenplay. I think it won the Oscar for the original screenplay. And but I thought it deserved much more than I'm sorry, I didn't care for Parasite. It's okay. You know, if you saw that was the big winner at the Oscars last year.
Hadn't seen it.
I've stopped really watching or paying attention to what gets awards because they seem to be less reliable in recent years as far as the quality and scope of the nominees these times. I'm not sure for movies, whatever went into nominating some of these movies for whatever they were for a long time. And this is maybe getting a little more political than I want to, but it seems like book nominations over the last 5 years have been changing in a way that I'm not sure reflects the general population either. So it makes you sit back and go, do I want to read the Hugo nominees? Is this really the best that's there? I don't know yet. I'm not sure that's the case, but that's me.
Awards means except in some cases, mean more to the person they're getting it, or mean more to the people who see it than it does to the author, entertainer, or whatever else. It's you know, I'm 2-time Parsec award winning author. Well, 99% of the readers out there don't know what a Parsec award is, but it looks impressive. It looks impressive.
It's impressive to me. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
That's fantastic, man. Jeez.
But you know, the deal is that if you stamp that on a book, it attracts the reader more than just a simple review, unless that review is from somebody pretty well known.
Yeah.
And we're now up to 6 cats on this cast.
Oh man, I need to get me some cats. I don't have any cats here.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I have a robot from Lost in Space over my shoulder, and I got a Eagle 1 from Space 1999. That's not quite the same.
No, we haven't done old sci-fi memorabilia on this show yet. We haven't done that.
I've got the police box from Doctor Who, so I've got a couple of things around, but no cats. But,
well, cats are awesome for climbing on microphones, as you've seen, bumping into screens, kneading them, torturing your foot.
That's good. That's important that you have helpers to produce such a high quality product.
We appreciate the compliment. Undeserved as it may be.
Wow! Holy shit, that was just bad.
Well, I certainly hope that everything works.
Thank you.
What were you saying, Paul? I'm sorry, I kept Paul off there. What were you saying, Paul?
I was going to say everybody needs to go check out Robert's Kickstarter.
They did. Yeah, we'll include a link in the show notes for everybody to go look here. We've still got 9 days to get them over the line, and I absolutely want to read some of this 1975 goodness.
Well,
Cylons wearing bell bottoms, doing Disco Fever. I'm telling you, it's got to happen.
I think it's safe to say there will be bell bottoms, most likely leisure suits and platform shoes.
Oh,
and yeah, I'm pretty sure that's going to be in here somewhere.
But a Kiss poster.
Is there going to be any fish in these platform heels? That's what I want to know.
That would be awesome. Yeah, like a Studio 54 thing with
yeah. Andy Warhol walking around, a robot Andy Warhol. Oh yeah, this thing's writing itself.
It is interesting, though. We're going to have to watch a little. I mean, we're in this new era, too. You have to watch some of the things that might have been acceptable in the 70s might not necessarily be acceptable to write about this time.
Yeah, this is true.
We have some great opportunities. I know we're going to really just smash it. There's going to be some great stuff. And one of the cool aspects of this project, when this thing takes off and we make a book, right? And that gets out there to all the backers, everybody gets copies of it. We're going to continue on with this series. I'm calling it the Decadium. We're going to have different books, different anthologies for different decades and different groups of authors who are going to be brought in to write about these space opera and with different decades for their flavor, their flair. So we have the 70s this time around. Next time around, it might be the 40s. You might do like sort of a World War II kind of thing with some of the things that were happening then, or it might be the 60s or the 1860s or whatever. There are a lot of possibilities. So
20s, Great Depression and Prohibition.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there are a lot of possibilities and a lot of different ways that you can bring in aspects of the culture and history and just bring things alive and just make it recognizable and yet different, unique, and fun. So
take the flavor without any of the baggage.
Huh?
Take the flavor without any of the baggage.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's all alternate history, so go hog wild.
That's right.
Go hog wild.
And it's space opera to begin with, so go hog wild there as well. Laws of physics, forget it.
Gosh, when you get back into prehistory, there's going to be a ton of pulp that you can get. People are going to be going, what is all this stuff that I've never heard of before?
I'll be a big fan of reading it. I spent so much time in Mesopotamia. Space opera, Mesopotamian space opera. I'm trying to get that one through my head, and it's not working.
Yikes.
I mean, do you draw in cuneiform tablets to command the ship to go somewhere?
Yes. Captain Nebuchadnezzar.
Oh, no, we're talking way before Nebuchadnezzar.
I recently read a couple of books that involved picking up nomadic warriors and them basically commandeering technology and becoming nomadic warriors in space. So it can be done.
He can make us go.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. You're going to make us go because you don't want to know what's going to happen to you if you don't make us go.
We have no idea how to use these tools or what they're done. Show Ugg how to use tool. Show Ugg. Ugg not smart. You fix tool.
Oh no, the characters were very smart. Don't mistake primitive for stupid.
Okay, fine. But ignorance with high technology can lead to some very
They just saw it as magic. They just saw it as magic. You're a wizard, and you're going to cast the spells that's necessary for me to do this.
When somebody doesn't understand what a black hole is and hits that button, that's kind of be a problem. Just saying.
Briefly. Very briefly.
It'll be a problem briefly.
This is scary because I'm actually writing something like that right now. So
Love it.
Well, Robert, to them, it's magic. It's just a matter of using the tools or forcing other people to use the tools for you.
Yeah,
I guess the whole thing that Asimov said was it Clark's law that anything sufficiently advanced is like magic?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You just got to remember that your characters, no matter where they're from, they're not idiots, even if they don't have the knowledge. They'll fit whatever is happening into the world in which they find themselves, and they'll find a way to work around it. Those that don't go insane.
Or they have no idea how something works. They only know how to make it work.
Right.
I'm not a astrophysicist, therefore I can't tell you about the black hole engine. I have no idea what the hell it does.
I press the button and I go. That's what I do.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, honest to God, guys. I mean, I'm not an idiot. Don't say anything, Terry, please. I'm not completely, a moron. And yet, how many things in my world do I not fully understand? I mean, I know some of the basics of physics. Yeah. I understand a little bit about binary code and a little bit about code, what it's supposed to do, but I don't really understand. I mean, this computer might as well be magic to me. I mean, it's incredible. It's the same with the phone. Phones are the same thing. There's a lot of stuff. Cars. Oh
God. Going back and looking at the 70s science fiction about what computers would be like in the future. Oh my God.
Yeah.
How far were they off? What, we've condensed this entire superstructure skyscraper building that used to be capable of doing 2 + 2 = 4, and we squashed it down to the size of a tiny little microchip in your watch, in your eye, in your wherever. That's like 5 years away, seems like.
Yeah. Did you ever think?
Don't worry. I'm sure that when you get an implant in your head, someone will hack it, and then you're doomed.
That's coming, dude. Those implants are on their way. Yeah, let there be no doubt. But, I mean, did you ever think, like, what if you were in a situation where you had to rebuild everything from scratch? I mean, who could do that?
No. That is the question. And there have been several stories that have dealt with that. When the makers die, and that information is lost, what's gonna happen when nobody knows how to make a circuit? When nobody knows how to fix a bus because it's got a short, they don't understand what a fuse is. What's going to happen when you get, I mean, this all sounds like very, very basic stuff, but the bottom line is once that knowledge is lost.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and give you a more recent example than that. I've been reading a series of books by Mark Wandry, who's a indie author. And he's dealing with a galactic civilization in this series that people from Earth and their descendants become intertwined with. And it becomes obvious going through this that the galactic civilization that is so far in advance of us is slowly decaying because they've forgotten how to do the really complex things. And they're coasting along, slowly losing bits and pieces.
Every generation loses a little more information, and no new information is being created.
That's exactly right. They can't make some of the machines that make them amazing anymore. So salvaging from other places has to be done. They have to find workarounds because they can no longer do the truly magnificent things that made them a galactic civilization.
And just wandering through the cemetery of what was.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's where the humans come in. Go get us these things.
So I'm going to make you a deal you can't understand. Go get this stuff and you'll pay us for taking it. All right. Have a nice day.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, those are great stories when you can figure out how to do that.
Yeah. So magic is a huge part of our lives. We don't think about it all the time. We think, well, I understand there are chips in this device and there's electrical current running.
There's a rune, a magic rune that touches upon the gods.
Yeah. The first time it connected to a BBS when I was 12 years old, that was magic.
Right. Oh, those early computers were magic too. I mean, to me, to all of us, it was amazing. But they were a little closer. They were a little bit closer to the bottom line technology. So it did help to understand a little bit more some of the basics that went into them. But now, I mean, modern computers are just incomprehensible to me.
We basically know enough words to mouth the incantations.
Yes.
Yes, but I could actually talk to the computer at the command line, which is
wizard.
Most people can't do anymore. Yeah, I know. Pretty soon it'll be burned for being a witch.
Yeah, you witch!
And on that note, I think we should go ahead and draw this to a close because we've kept Robert for longer than we probably should have.
I'm on board. However long you guys want to talk, just keep going.
We've been on the air for an hour and a half. We probably shouldn't go any longer. It has been a real pleasure to have you along.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming along and joining us. Why don't you take a moment to tell people where they can find you and where they can find your stuff, as well as the Kickstarter?
Well, thanks, Terry. Anybody can just Google my name online, and you'll just find my work anywhere. I'm on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, etc. But maybe the best thing to do is to look me up at robertjeschonek.com. That's my website. And I'm assuming my name will be in the show notes somewhere.
It will be.
So that'll remove a major obstacle to that.
No, it won't. Come on.
Don't worry. I'm sure he'll misspell it because this is Paul.
It's a real consonant-rich tangle of syllables there. So, but yeah, just look me up, robertjeschonek.com, or look me up anywhere, or look up Space 1975 on Kickstarter, and you guys are going to provide the link. So I hope everyone will check that out and give it a real good read, because you'll see the promise in this book and how exciting and fun it is already, and why it's going to be such a great thing when it's all done and out there, and why you should be a part of it. I hope everybody out there will consider becoming a part of the team, helping us to make this a reality, helping us to make the Decadium series a reality, so I can work with more excellent writers who specialize in science fiction or have an interest in different eras. So that's pretty much the nutshell.
I'm
Cool.
cheerfully supporting the Kickstarter. I can't even remember where I heard about it, but I chanced across it and said, "Ooh, pretty." And you should too, folks. All right, folks, if you want to send us any information, ask us about anything we've talked about today, send us a note at show@deadrobotsociety.com. You can find us on Facebook at the Listeners of the Dead Robot Society Facebook group. You can find Paul on Twitter at Paul_E_Cooley, because he's the only one of us that can tolerate Twitter.
And Terry's the only one of us that can tolerate Facebook. So
pretty much.
Yeah, there you go.
Pretty much. You can find us on YouTube at DRS Podcast / well, not DRS, YouTube / DRS Podcast. I sure did. I sure got that all messed up. YouTube.com/DRS Podcast. We have to thank the good folks at podhoster.com who host the audio of these episodes. And of course, if you would like to support the show, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/DRS Podcast, where for as little as $1 a month, you can get exclusive content like the live show that we're planning on doing very soon, that we will talk to our patrons and have it about. And for the $10 patrons, you get your name read on the show.
And our $10 patrons are Summer Wilson, Joshua Sylvester, Tony L. Joy, Andrew Smallwood, Veronica Jaguar, Rick Shaw, Nathan Cosby, Drew Bernardi, Chris Winder, and Isabel Cushy. Thank you very much, folks, for your support. Very much appreciate it.
It means a whole lot to us, and we'll be talking to you soon with a Patreon-only podcast very shortly.
Yes.
Robert, thanks again for coming on. Best of luck with the Kickstarter. I expect to hear over the next week how you have not only reached your goal, but start smashing those stretch goals.
Thank you, guys. And thanks for having me on. It was really an honor and a great source of entertainment as well. I would love to chat with you again sometime in the future.
I think we'd love to have you on.
We can probably handle that. We can probably do that. With that, folks, go get writing.
Yep, go get writing, and we are out of here. We will see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.